Banned. That was the word stamped across her file in red, bold enough to bleed through the paper. Asterisk, asterisk, restricted from active deployment. Too dangerous. Asterisk, asterisk, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell stood outside the briefing room, arms crossed, listening through the thick steel door. Inside, voices rose and fell in controlled arguments. She didn't need to hear every word. She already knew the conclusion. She wouldn't be going on the mission again. Sarah exhaled slowly and looked down the hallway of the naval base. The walls were lined with photographs, teams smiling after successful operations, faces frozen in moments of victory that never made the news. She recognized many of them. Some had trained with her. Some had trusted her with their lives. Some were about to go into danger without her. Inside the room, Commander Mark Reynolds cleared his throat. With all due respect, he said, "She's the best sniper we have." Another voice replied, older, sharper. And that's exactly the problem. She doesn't follow containment protocols. She adapts on the fly. She completes objectives. She rewrites them. Sarah turned away before the door opened. She'd heard it all before. Too independent. Too decisive. Too effective without permission. Too dangerous. The label hadn't come from failure. It had come from success that made people uncomfortable. For missions where she'd made judgment calls faster than command could approve. For moments where hesitation would have cost lives, Sarah walked to the range instead. The long outdoor range was empty at this hour, the sun still low over the horizon. She set up alone, methodical, precise. The rifle rested against her shoulder like it belonged there, an extension of her breath, her heartbeat. Through the scope, the world narrowed. Wind. Distance. Stillness. She fired. Dead center. Again and again. Each shot landed exactly where it was meant to, as if the target had no choice. By midday, the base buzzed with activity. The mission team boarded transport. Final checks underway. Sarah watched from a distance, helmet under her arm, jaw tight. One of the younger operators, Ethan Cole, hesitated when he saw her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "we could use you out there." She gave him a small, controlled smile. "Follow the plan. Come back safe." He nodded, but the doubt stayed in his eyes. Hours later, everything went wrong. The first alert came through fragmented radio chatter. Signals interference. Unexpected resistance. The enemy team wasn't where intelligence said they'd be. Inside the operations center, voices overlapped, tension rising. Repeat last transmission. Signal degraded. Team Bravo respond. Silence. Sarah stood at the back of the room, watching the screens. She didn't need to hear the panic to see it. Body language told her everything. Command was reacting, not leading. Reynolds looked up and saw her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She broke the silence. They walked into a shifted position. "We're working it." "They're boxed," Sarah said. "And you know it." Reynolds ran a hand through his hair. "You're grounded." "Grounded doesn't mean blind." Another voice cut in. "We could deploy air support." "Too late," Sarah said. "And too loud." The room went quiet. Reynolds stared at the live map, then back at her. "You're saying you can reach them?" "I'm saying I already know the terrain," she replied. "And I don't need a full team to create space." A senior officer shook his head. "This is exactly why she's restricted." Sarah stepped forward. "This is exactly why I'm not." The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Finally, Reynolds made a decision that would follow him for the rest of his career. Unofficially, he said, low enough that only she could hear, "I don't see you in this room." Sarah nodded once. She was gone before anyone could stop her. The insertion was silent. No fanfare, no announcement, just boots on dirt and the quiet weight of responsibility settling into her chest. She moved alone, controlled, using cover and elevation like second nature. The world slowed the way it always did when she was focused. Every sound mattered. Every shadow had meaning. Through her scope, she spotted movement. Not random, coordinated. The enemy team was disciplined. Professional. They weren't reckless. They were confident. That confidence would be their mistake. Sarah adjusted her position, breathing steady. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. Time bent around patience. The first target dropped without drama. No panique. Just absence. The second reacted, scanning, uncertain. Sarah was already elsewhere. She changed angles, altered distance, made herself unpredictable. She didn't wipe them out in chaos. She dismantled them in silence, one decision at a time. Each shot was deliberate. Each movement denied them information. Minutes passed. Then more. From afar, the trap team felt the pressure ease without understanding why. Radio static gave way to brief, confused reports. Movements ceased. Unknown assistance. Area clearing. By the time command realized what was happening, it was already over. Sarah reached the extraction point just as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in muted gold. She stood still, rifle lowered, waiting. When the transport arrived, no one spoke at first. Ethan Cole finally broke the silence. They said you were banned. She met his eyes. Orders change. Back at base, the atmosphere was different. Quieter. Heavier. Reynolds met her outside the hangar. You disobeyed a direct restriction, he said. Yes. You saved the team. Yes. He exhaled. They're not going to like this. They never do. Later that night, Sarah sat alone, cleaning her rifle. She knew what would come next. Reports. Reviews. Closed-door meetings where words like liability and precedent would be used carefully. But she also knew this. Every operator from that mission would remember who showed up when plans failed. If you're watching this story and want more intense, realistic military-style stories about courage, skill, and impossible decisions, make sure to subscribe to Generals and Truth Stories. Because this was only part 1. And being labeled too dangerous was just the beginning of Sarah Mitchell's fight. The review came faster than Sarah expected. She stood outside the conference room the next morning, the same red-stamped word echoing in her mind. Banned. Too dangerous. The door was closed, but the tone inside was unmistakable. Measured voices, careful language, decisions framed as concerns rather than blame. She didn't interrupt. She waited. When the door finally opened, Commander Mark Reynolds stepped out, fatigue lining his face. He motioned her aside into the corridor. They're calling it a deviation, he said quietly. Unapproved action. High risk. Sarah nodded. What about the team? Alive, Reynolds replied. Shaken. Grateful. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They want to ground you indefinitely, he continued. Administrative role. Training support. No field ops. Sarah leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on nothing. Because I succeeded. Because you didn't ask, he said. She met his gaze. If I had asked, they wouldn't be here to argue. Reynolds didn't disagree. That was the problem. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Sarah was reassigned to the range, then to a planning office where maps were discussed but never tested. She did the work. She always did, but the distance gnawed at her. She listened to radios she couldn't answer and watched teams depart without her. Ethan Cole stopped by one afternoon, helmet tucked under his arm. They won't say it out loud, he said, but everyone knows. Knows what? That we walked out because you went in. Sarah offered a small smile. You walked out because you followed your training. And you rewrote it, he said. Again. A week later, intelligence shifted. Not dramatically. Subtly. A pattern of movement that didn't fit. A silence where there should have been noise. Analysts circled it, debated it, set it aside as inconclusive. Sarah didn't. She recognized the cadence immediately. The way a disciplined unit disappeared when it wanted to be unseen. The way a smart adversary tested boundaries without crossing lines. She brought her assessment to Reynolds after hours, spreading satellite prints across his desk. This isn't over, she said. They're repositioning. Reynolds studied the images, jaw tight. Command thinks the threat is neutralized. They're wrong, Sarah replied. They think in endpoints. This is a transition. He looked up. You're asking me to stick my neck out again. I'm asking you to trust pattern over comfort. Reynolds leaned back, weighing the cost. If you're right, then waiting makes it worse. Silence stretched. Show me, he said finally. Sarah worked through the night, correlating movement, terrain, and timing. She didn't accuse. She demonstrated. By dawn, Reynolds had enough to reopen the discussion, carefully, diplomatically. The response was predictable. We can't justify another deployment. Risk profile remains unacceptable. Too many variables. Sarah listened from the back of the room as her work was reduced to cautionary language. Then the feed cut in data patrol. Routine. Minimal threat. The first sign was a flicker of static. The second was the pause that followed, the kind that told Sarah everything before the words arrived. Contact unclear. She didn't wait. Reynolds caught her arm. You don't have authorization. I don't need it to see, she said, pulling free. They're walking into the same shape as before. The operations center erupted in overlapping commands. Air support was suggested. A diversion was planned. Everything took time. Sarah took seconds. She grabbed her kit, moving with the calm of someone who knew exactly where she was going. The band still stood. The risk hadn't changed. Only the stakes had. She inserted farther out this time, choosing elevation and distance over speed. The terrain rewarded patience. From her vantage, the pattern was obvious. Layers of concealment designed to funnel movement, not stop it. She breathed, slowed her heart, and waited. When she acted, it wasn't dramatic. It was precise that a lookout disappeared. A corridor of movement collapsed. Confusion replaced coordination. She didn't chase. She shaped that on the ground. The patrol felt pressure lift in increments, like a knot loosening one strand at a time. Orders came through clearer. Paths opened. Be why the time extraction arrived. The threat had dissolved into silence again. Withdrawn, disrupted, denied. Back at base, no one raised their voice. They didn't have to. Reynolds met her on the tarmac. You understand this makes it worse. Sarah nodded. I understand it makes it honest. The review this time was shorter. They talked about control, about precedent, about the danger of exceptions. Sarah listened, then spoke once. You call it dangerous when outcomes don't fit process, she said. I call it dangerous when process replaces judgment. No one argued. Not really. They reassigned her again, this time with conditions that sounded like compromise but felt like distance. She accepted it without comment. Weeks passed. Then a message came through, quiet, personal, unmistakable. Ethan Cole, ma'am, it read. We're training a new unit. They asked for you. Sarah stared at the screen, then looked up at the range stretching out before her. She realized something had shifted, not in policy, in trust. She didn't need permission to matter. She needed opportunity, but on her first day with a new unit, she didn't mention bans or labels. She taught spacing, timing, when to wait and when to move. She taught them that discipline wasn't obedience. It was responsibility. At the end of the session, one of them asked, Is it true they said you were too dangerous? Sarah considered the question, then smiled. Only if you confuse danger with clarity. That night, she stood alone under the floodlights, cleaning her rifle the way she always had. Methodical, respectful, grounded. She thought about the words stamped across her file and how little it mattered now. Because when orders failed, someone still had to decide. And she had proven twice that she would not if you stayed till the end of this story. Make sure to subscribe to Generals and True Stories for more realistic, cinematic military stories that focus on skill, courage, and the hard choices made in silence. Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one who breaks the rules, that it's the one who understands exactly when they no longer apply.